Hi guys, how's it going? I wanted to hop on here and just say hello. I also wanted to kind of tell you guys a little bit about my story and what happened about a year ago. I know I haven't really been posting as much as I used to, and so I just wanted to give you guys like an update and just kind of go from there. So about a year ago or so, I God basically told me to leave my job. This is not the first time that he told me to leave my job. He actually told me um, at least two times before I actually did it. He told me, I want you to leave your job. I want you to stay home with your son, and I want you to homeschool him, right? At that time, it didn't seem actually right for me because I was the one that was making the most. I had been on my job for a really long time. So when I left my job last year, I would have been around 9 years in my job. I had a 401k. I had 200 hours of PTO. I was making pretty good money. And so it was a good job. And so it got to the point where God was like, okay, like you're going to have to leave. And he didn't just say that. He also lifted his grace. And the best way I can describe it is like I just wasn't able to flow in my job um as how I used to. Even it got to the point that day that I the day that I had to walk away is that I actually joined a meeting and I sounded like I made no sense. And I sat there and thought to myself, this is crazy. I know what I'm talking about, but I can't make the words out of my mouth. And that was really God, like just sort of like telling me like I already told you you're not supposed to be here. So I had a lot of spiritual experiences actually like in that day. um Not to count the fact that God actually, I didn't he didn't take my gift away, my gift things away, but what he did is almost, I think he like, the best way I can describe them is he dialed them down. So I couldn't hear him, I couldn't prophesy, I couldn't give words of knowledge, like I couldn't do anything that I used to. And if you are a prophet or works or like you flow in the prophetic, you will understand when, if this were to happen to you, you literally feel like you've just lost an arm or like a leg or an eye, because it's an extra, like extra senses that you have. And so that was dialed back and I really felt like it was taken away. So I after that, I had to walk away from my job. I called my boss, I remember, and I was like, I can't do this no more. It was very emotional. I also want to let you guys know I didn't just up and quit like that. I actually called one of my mentors before I make this decision. I called him and I was like, look, Pastor, like, God told me this and this happened. Like, I experienced a lot of spiritual warfare while I was at my job. Well, that day that I was trying to leave. And he just gently told me, yeah, I think you already know the answer. I don't want to give it to you again because I feel like you're very hesitant about it. But he's like, I think like you already know. So I just knew. I was like, I have to leave. So I quit my job. And during that week, all hell broke loose. And when I mean all hell broke loose, like it did. So on Tuesday, I left. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So Friday. Oh, so let me rewind that. During that week, our landlord also basically like told us that we needed to leave from our apartment because my husband's like, yeah, my wife just left her job. And so like I don't know if I'm able to afford the rent. And so she was like, the good thing is that she was gracious enough to be like, we'll just dissolve the lease and then you guys can just leave, which it was amazing. And so we had all of that happening. Then my husband was trying to figure out to like move us out of this apartment to his grandma's and his grandpa's. So that was happening. Then come Friday, I woke up at 3 a.m. and I was in so much pain. I was crying and I told my husband, like, please call 911. So the ambulance came And I literally went downstairs and I was just in the stairs crying. I was crying and I was like, Jesus, like, please just help me. Because I literally, I was in a lot of pain and I literally felt something exploded inside of me. They took me into the hospital and they actually realized that I had a cyst that burst in my ovary at that time. So it was very painful. And so they, basically give medication and everything. And then that was it. So that was one. Number two, Saturday morning, I went back to the hospital because through revelation, God told me that I actually had parasites inside of my stomach. So I went, they tested me, they're like, yeah, you have them. And so I called my dad because my dad is actually a holistic practitioner. Well, he was, but he still helps people. So I called him and I was like, Dad, like they tell me that I have like worms or whatever in my stomach, I have parasites. What do I do? And he's like, he gave me like a natural um way to get rid of them. And so I I was like, they're trying to give me this medication in the hospital. And then uh, I heard him say, don't take the medicine. But when he said that, it sounded like my dad, but it was like an over layer voice, if it makes any sense. That's the best way I can describe it. But that moment, I knew it wasn't my dad. I knew it was God talking through my dad. And even I went back and I was like, wait, Dad, did you say to not take the medicine? He's like, no, no, do take the medicine, but also do the holistic stuff. And I was like, that's weird. Now, I had just left my job. I didn't have insurance. I barely had any money. So I did not have any money to buy really anything to help me. And so I remember I told the hospital, like, look, I don't have any money. Like, I really need, um, maybe if you guys can give me the medication. They're like, yeah, we can give it to you. And then long story short, they ended up not giving it to me, which I wasn't supposed to take it clearly. So that went by. At this point, it was very, we've gone through like so much stress in my family at the moment. My husband was just having a very hard time. He was very stressed out. He was working overnight, so it was really bad, right? I was on top of that, I was experiencing a lot of attacks, mental attacks, a lot of just terrible things were like being said in my spirit, not in my spirit, at the best way I can describe it. And Sunday came, well, Saturday night, and so basically Sunday already. So Sunday around, again, 3 a.m., I started to feel like there was something wrong in the apartment. Um, Prior to this, I already kind of had a conversation with my husband, and I told him that we should have not spent the night in the apartment because I just knew there was gonna be something really bad happening. So we couldn't do it. So we stayed that night, and I just started to feel like I started to hear and perceive just thoughts coming through my head saying like, oh, like to hurt myself and to hurt my baby, and I will never do that. I will never do that. And that was clearly an attack from the enemy. But at that time, it was very challenging for me because number one, I couldn't hear God the way I used to. So I felt like very disarmed. And I know some of you are thinking like, well, why didn't you read the Bible, Maria? I did read the Bible. I did. I actually called somebody from my church and I told this lady like what I was feeling and how I really needed somebody with me at that time because my husband had been gone to go to work overnight. Unfortunately, the lady failed me and she just told me to go take a shower and that I was gonna be fine. She said, just go take a shower, listen to the worship, you're gonna be fine. So I did. I took a shower and everything. And so fast forward, I lie down and everything. And then at 3 a.m. came and I literally just had this overwhelming feeling of something very dark entering into my apartment. It was just very dark and evil. And I ran to the bathroom, and just to kind of try to clear, like to put water in my face or something. And when I put the water in my face, I looked up. When I did, it was me in the mirror, but I looked like I had been starved for months. You could see the bones in my shoulders. You could see my face with no cheeks or nothing. I looked like just completely starved. So I freaked out because I saw myself like that. So I ran to the bedroom and I grabbed my son. And when I grabbed him, he looked the same way. He looked like he hadn't eaten in months. So I just started to freak out, and I called 911 because all I could hear in my head was that I needed to hurt myself and my son. And I was not gonna let the devil have that at all. So I called 911. They came. I remember I went downstairs before they got here to the apartment. I just grabbed onto the tree bark, just to try to like make sense of what the reality and where I was at. And all I can remember was just I would never, like, I'm not going to do, like, I would never do this to myself. I would never do this to my son. I would never, 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 never do this. And I was crying and I was crying, and they finally picked me up, and I was just freaking out. I was like screaming. And there's like other details within the ambulance ride, but it involves my husband, and I don't want to like get into much details with this. But they took me to the hospital, and of course, like always, they labeled me as schizophrenic. They labeled me as someone that's unstable. So they put me on medication. They try to give me the antipsychotics, and they try to like just put me in medication. Although I was on really heavy warfare, and I could see these entities. There was one entity which I don't really want to describe it very well, because I really truly believe that the things that you watch can open things. But this entity looked just, it looked horrible. It really looked horrible. It looked terrible. I have never seen an entity that looked this demonic and probably my entire life. And that thing was, it followed me to the hospital. And I'm going to tell you that you might be wondering, well, what was Jesus in all this? Jesus wasn't within me. There was this point where I talked to the doctors, and when I started talking to them, and I was telling them the stories about how I see Jesus, and of course they wouldn't believe me. They weren't believing me. But as I was talking, something happened, something shifted, where I saw Jesus coming forward through me, and he was actually speaking through my mouth, if it makes sense. It wasn't me anymore. And so Jesus was with me this whole time. And of course, I was put in the hospital, labeled as schizophrenic, labeled as like high risk and everything, because they've done that to me before, because they don't understand the spiritual world. So they almost took my son away from me and my family. I was away from them for 7 months. I stayed with my sister, so I thank God for my sister, because she allowed me to stay with her for those 7 months. I cried, I yelled, I screamed out of the top of my lungs. It's a very terrible moment for me, those 7 months. And you know what? The only person that knew never left me after a while, I knew it was God. You know, that scripture that says he will never leave you nor forsake you is true. Even though I didn't hear him, he was there. He showed me over and over again how he was there. And there were days that I didn't feel like reading my Bible, but I would still try to make time and read my Bible. I had so many trials during that time, and to be honest, I would like to tell you that I did great, but I don't think I did. You know, I'm here. I survived, and I'm here, and I'm fast forward a year later, I'm with my family now. I've been with my family since February. but it is only because of God. It is only because of the grace of God and because of people that intercede for me, because there's several people that I met through the journey of those 7 months that I was by myself, which they interceded for me, they helped me, they guided me. But ultimately, it was God, you know? There were some experiences that I had where I cried. I was crying so hard and I was screaming and I was telling God, like, please, God, bring my family back, bring my family back. And I remember at some point I was like, God, I just need a hug. And I felt like this blanket like over me, and I was able to like finally calm down and like stop crying so much. So even though it was a very dark and terrible time for me, it's something that I don't think I'm ever going to forget because it was so traumatizing. I 100% believe that Jesus was with me all the time. So there's more to this, but I think I am going to have to actually write in book two about this. Book one, I'm still working on it. I'm working with the editor, with another editor, just because we had some problems with the first one. So we're working with the second editor, and I'm adding more to the book. So stay tuned. I'll let you guys know where it comes out. That's all I got for you guys. Thank you for watching, and God bless you.